Ladies and gentlemen, this is my latest art piece titled Oceanic. It is dyed resin poured in a wooden frame that I made with my hands. The inspiration with this piece first came from Art Basel last year. I saw quite a few resin pieces, and like any good artist, I decided to borrow the idea and figure out for myself, because that's something I love to do with my art, is constantly be trying new things, borrowing ideas, taking inspiration, and seeing how I can do them myself. So I thought working with resin was going to be easy. I thought you could just mix the resin, the epoxy and the hardener, and pour it, and that's it. And I found that resin is a very humbling medium to work with. It's very finicky. The temperature that you operate in matters. You gotta mix it very well. You gotta make sure it's a dust-free environment, otherwise dust will get trapped in the resin. There's also air bubbles, which you gotta figure out how to get the air bubbles out. So yeah, I learned a lot about patience. And also not rushing. I thought I could make these, I thought I'd be able to make this piece super quickly, just pouring it and in one go, but that was not the case. I ended up pouring about 6 or 7 layers of resin before I got it to how I wanted it to be. So the process started with these 2 canvases, which I painted solid color blue, 2 different color blue, which I mixed the paint, the 2 different colors, and I intentionally wanted to mix these colors so that they would be slightly different versus just using a color straight out of a tube. I used acrylic paint because the acrylic paint would dry more quickly, and I could easily just mix the acrylic paint with water to get a nice even coat. So that's what I did first. And then next, once that fully dried, I poured the first layer of resin, which I used a water-based dye, and I liked how it turned out. One of these, I think this one was painted, the blue color was more blue, and that one was more green. So I used a more green dye for the resin on this one, and a more blue dye for the resin on that one, to see, I was kind of curious if the colors would balance out, because at first it was more of a blue and more of a green, and I wanted to see if the green resin and the blue resin would kind of bring these two to closer colors, blue colors, and I think it did. So after I poured that first layer of resin, I had the brilliant idea to create a wall, like a wooden wall, and then pour the resin inside. Because one of my first thoughts in creating this piece was I wanted to create pieces that looked like bodies of water on the wall. So I thought maybe having this wooden frame would create more of this contained body of water, almost like a pool. You look at a pool and it's contained. So I thought it'd be cool to have a contained body of water on the wall. So that's why I then went and built these wooden frames with the intention that now I could pour more resin within the frames to create literally like a held body of water. So after that, I learned that if you want to pour resin on top of resin, you have to sand the resin to create texture for the resin to hold on to. Because this glossy, smooth finish, if you just pour resin straight on top, it won't actually stick onto it. So I did that a few times. I kept pouring dyed resin onto it until I filled to the brim. Also the edges, I left, it almost looks like a shoreline. You can see when you look closely, it almost looks like waves like crashing onto a shore. So that looks like water as well. And the last layer, there are imperfections on the surface, which part of me really wanted to add another layer and like really make sure I mix the resin well and do everything perfectly to get a perfectly smooth surface. But there's also a part of me that really believes in embracing imperfections, both in ourselves and in the art. And in every art piece that I do anyways, I always see imperfections. I know that's a struggle for all creators, is the pursuit of perfection. I think I could work on a piece forever, probably forever, constantly pursuing the state of perfection. So I think I'm always practicing like when is something good enough to publish that I'm happy with, and it's like truly something I love. So the imperfections on the surface, I honestly, like, the more I look at them, they even look, it looks like water. If you look at a body of water, it's never perfectly flat. There's ripples, there's currents, there's waves. So it even looks more like, it makes it look more like a body of water. And it's cool, it creates a little interest. Another unintended perk of these paintings was the canvas kind of like curved under the weight of the resin. So it kind of pooled in the middle, and that created this kind of gradient thing, which I really love, this gradient effect of it being darker in the middle versus the edges. That's because the resin is dyed, it's colored. So if there's a thicker layer of resin in the middle, it created this thickness. Also with the dyed resin, one thing I realized that I really love is that when you look closely, if it was clear resin, like perfectly clear resin, I think it would just look like glossy canvas. But the dyed resin kind of creates this depth when you look at it, that even the edges, when you look at the wood, you can see a little bit of blue resin in between your eye and the wood. So even looking at the blue, it creates this depth, almost like you're looking in the deep ocean. If you look off the edge of the boat, all you see is like this deep blueness, and it's like hard to explain how you can see the depth, but you can see it. So that's kind of what happened with these. And for that reason, I titled them Oceanic. It's two pieces together, and I have supplies to make a whole bunch more resin pieces. I'm really enjoying it, and I will do that. Let me know if you like this type of video. I might make more storytelling videos of how I made my art pieces, and check out my website if you like them. They're available as of now.